Hello, Marky Dragon, also known as Marcus Eikenberry in real life, and welcome to another episode in my entrepreneurial series. I want to talk today about community and about the community that we had at one point. At one point, we were the largest place for buying, selling, and trading of World of Warcraft accounts. And in fact, our forums had we were averaging about 2.5 million views per month. We had what we estimated, people were doing this buying, selling, and trading of accounts, and we estimated that it was over $250,000 worth of accounts that were being, transactions that were happening per month. We never were involved in the actual transactions or whatnot, but we just kind of took a snapshot and estimated, how much commerce was happening there. And the forums were successful. It was a nice community. I don't know how many posts we had per month, but it was a lot. I remember many times pruning back to about 2 million posts in the forums, because over 2 million, we were going to have to scale even further. And at that point, we were already, I think, spread across 5 servers, which was a real feat in itself, because we were running on Ultimate Bulletin Board, which was made as a single server solution for forums, and we busted it out on the back end with 2 database servers and 3 web servers, and they had never seen that before. And in fact, they came to us asking us, how did we do it? And everything. I mean, we had to do a lot of custom programming within the forums in order to make that happen. But a single server couldn't handle it back then. It's not like today where you can say, okay, we've got a cloud and, we can throw all this processing power at it. It wasn't like that. We owned the servers, and they were beefy servers. At one point, we had an entire rack of servers at a co-location. And that stuff was expensive. I remember buying those servers. Wow. Lots of money. But the fact is that in advertising revenue, the forums made, they made considerable amount of money. It was somewhere between $200,000 and $250,000 in advertising in 1 year. I remember that was our highest year. And so it's been a while, though, so I don't remember all of the exact details. I can tell you, though, that it was in 2010 that we started to decide that we wanted to make a change. And there was several things that were happening at that time period. One is that around that time period, and I can't remember if it was right before or after, but I was deposed by Blizzard, and it was in a lawsuit against WoW Glider, which was a bot. We had actually driven sales for the bot, and that was it had to have been before, because of the decisions we made. That led up to us not having our community anymore. And, so being deposed by Blizzard, not wanting that extra legal attention, the fact that they won eventually in a judgment that was in the millions of dollars against Glider. And, I didn't want to be a part of that, not only because of the legal threat, but, I don't want, I'm not one for conflict in that way. I'm not one for, looking for, to be on the wrong side. I want to be on the side of justice, on the side of being right, on the side of, sometimes I'm a rebel. And I'll admit it, and sometimes I push that pretty far, but it's not generally the place where I want to be. So, we were very successful. What led up to the forums being so successful was that, we developed RMT, Real Money Trade, in our community, and in some other ancillary sites. And when RMT started, nobody knew what it was. Nobody called it that. And it was back in the day. It was late 1997, and people started selling items in Ultima Online for real money. And when I saw somebody had sold like a sword or something like that for like $20, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And so I did a couple of tests and sold some things. And so then I'm like, okay, can I get supply? And I did that. And that turned into a very good business. Now, what it's turned into today, or maybe not today, it's not as bad as it was at one point, but what it turned into was all kinds of farmers, and farmers from countries that a dollar went a lot further. And so, China, Philippines, some of the Eastern European countries and everything. And it was, it turned into a monster is what happened. So game companies started saying that they didn't believe that it was okay to do anymore. And while we were grandfathered in with Ultima Online and still doing it, we were dabbling in some other areas, looking at, okay, how can we facilitate this or whatnot. And what happened is we became the biggest forums in the world for doing this for World of Warcraft. And it wasn't something that we set out at the beginning when World of Warcraft came out and said, we are going to do this. It's just that the community all of a sudden was there, and then we embraced it. And, it on the business side, it turned out to be pretty good. So back in 2010, decided that we no longer wanted to do anything that violated the terms of service of any game company. And this was a decision that was not easy to make because we were making quite a bit of money from these things going on. But it always bothered me. I equated it a little bit to, like running a porn site or something like that, which is something I've never done. I've had the opportunity to, but it was not something that I wanted to be involved in. And, it's one of those things where, when your mom says, so what is it you're doing for a living? Oh yeah, I run porn sites, Mom. No. So, and when we started all this, it was not, it was okay. And so the tide changed. We already had momentum though, and we kept going with it. So eventually we decided that we were giving it up. And that was a really big deal in many ways, because the amount of income that we were getting from that was really big. But decided that just wanted to look out further on, being successful in the long term. And was that sustainable? Was that considered something to be like a quick buck? Or was that, an area that I wanted to be in? The answer is that I didn't really want to be there. But it was, business-wise at the time, it was pretty interesting, pretty amazing, and surprising. So we followed it for a while. Then making the change. So we said, okay, we're done. And we did several things. One is we sold the community, which I'll come back to that. Because that did not go so well for the community or for the new owner. And we got rid of any properties that, any websites and everything that had anything to do with violation of terms of service. We also were processing transactions, doing any fraud for some companies that were, selling game accounts or whatnot. In fact, my video where I talk about losing, $250,000 in one day was one of those companies that we were. It was that type of thing that we were no longer going to do. So, with that, with that said, we were just giving up a lot of money, but also we were giving up the community, and the community that we built. I made so many friends in that community. That community was my heart. And giving it up was a very hard thing to do. But, I had to look at it as a pure business decision and not as, hey, I'm getting rid of my friends or, whatever. What effect will this have on the other people? Of course, we took a look at what effect it would have. We decided, okay, are we going to just shut this down? Or will we attempt to allow the community to survive at another location? So we had an offer on the table for a while, someone wanting to buy our forums. And so I took him up on that offer. And the amount of money that we got, I didn't feel like it was a huge amount. It was enough to get us to do the work, to move it over and everything, and to look over contracts and stuff. But it wasn't anything that would make us rich. And in fact, the amount was, at the high point of what we were making on advertising on the forums, I think it was somewhere between 2 and 4 months worth of income. Not a whole lot. But we knew that people would drift away whenever we stopped running it. So one of the things that we did was we outlined what was important about the community and what wasn't, and what kind of processes we took with things. And we really drilled into the new owners. We said, you know what? You really got to follow this guideline because this is where the success has happened. And I was worried about them not following it because I had experience with selling another company 10 years prior or so, where we wrote up a whole manual for this company for how it was operated and everything, and how we were being successful. And then when we sold the company, they put that manual up on a shelf. That manual, by the way, was 100, 200 pages long. That we took the time to write out all those processes and everything so that they could follow it, so they could be successful. We wanted them to be successful. And they put it on a shelf and just did it their own way. And what happened was, within a year, the company fell apart and was gone. And when they, complained to us, hey, you sold us this bum company. We started going over it with them, going, okay, did you do this and this and this? And they're like, you never told us to do that. And we're like, we wrote you an entire book on how to do this and told you should follow it. They didn't. What are we supposed to do? I mean, we gave them the tools and they chose not to use those tools. So when I sold the community, the forums that we had and everything, it was something that I knew was very important. And so I kept trying to drill it into them and, gave them the guidelines, gave them all this stuff and told them not to change any rules, not to do all this stuff, to wait a month or two for the dust to settle after the move before making any changes. Well, a week later, they made major changes. And, of course, they were the new owners and they knew best. That's what we all think whenever we've got some control of something. You think, I know what I'm doing. I'm the one in control now. And so this is what I should do. And you go and do it and it doesn't work out. And then you get all pissed off. Well, it's exactly what happened. Is they took control. They got all settled and they started making some changes. And like the first change, we cringed just a little bit and said, well, I suppose that one change will be okay. And then bam, another big change and another big change. And we're like going, whoa, they have derailed. So anyway, it failed for them. I mean, maybe they got their money back out of it. and everything. But what happened is that the members of the community that survived the move, because not all of them would survive the move, the ones I had left started jumping ship, and that was a problem. So, but it's one of those things you learn when you buy a company, and it's successful. You have to fully replicate that success and keep it there before you start making any changes. And you have to know it inside and out before you start making any changes, because otherwise you're making decisions with only half the information. And you may have good ideas and you may think you know what's best, but the fact is that there's a special sauce that made that so successful. And so, and you need to learn exactly what that is so that you can replicate it and build off of it, not destroy it. So, the several times after this, we tried to rebuild community, do new things, new forums and everything, and have the same kind of traffic flow, the same amount of people coming in or whatnot. But what we found is that we weren't able to replicate that, not to the same scale. And it may be just, a sign of the times with the changes and everything. 2010, there was Facebook. I believe it was out then. We were starting to see social come out, replacing things like forum communities. And these days, forum communities do still exist, but it's not quite the same as it used to be. And so technologies change, where people's attention span changes and everything. So, can communities and forums be successful these days? Yes, they can. And in fact, we're working on another one right now. But at the same time, can they be successful? What binds them together? I can tell you our new communities are not bound together by anything that violates terms of service of any game. But, what we do have, hopefully that's sticky enough that people want to be there and want to participate. So I guess that's kind of two stories in one. And, losing that community, that was a really hard decision. But it was a business decision that we decided was going to be the best for the long term. And right after that was announced, we actually got contacted by several game publishers that said, hey, we've been wanting to work with you, but we had this one impediment in the way, and we couldn't do it because you guys were participating in RMT. But now that you're not, let's talk. And that turned into some good, successful business ventures with game publishers. So that was all good, and I was really glad to see that people were realizing what value we had to the community, but they didn't like this one thing. And when that one thing went away, they hopped on board. So, all right, that's it for this episode. I'm Marky Dragon. Take care.